reducing it, right, a little bit?
They're just doing a whole new one. It's just like 16 by, or 6 by 6 or something like that. It's just
Under
away
40
with-
square feet.
Yeah.
Is it what, 44 or something?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
And they're doing away with the extra thing where it's just one block with the snake
really?
logo on it and stuff.
Okay. Hello.
There's no pins laying around up here.
We didn't know.
Talked to us today. She said, yeah, so probably I'll come back for a time after 2 or 3 months. Has to be at least 2. We're thinking about it.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah. So, I'm getting tired of it.
Yeah, no, get to that point. I'm not doing winter again. Oh, do you? Okay. That's good. Get rid of them. Enjoy it. Enjoy it.
Go ahead and start here. Planning Commission, March 21st, 2016.
Roll call.
Mr. Cox?
Here.
Mr. Cosar? Mr. Chevelle?
Here.
Mr. Westbrook?
Here. All right. First item tonight is the proposed signage for Phil's Auto and Truck Center, I-76 East Highland Road. Come on up.
Good, how are you today?
Good.
I'm the building owner, I'm trying to solve this issue, but I'm not involved. Mr. Francis' letter came today to us, there's 2 other issues, I made copies for everyone that are here regarding the size of the building. Sure. Whether it's illuminated, and also the construction of the signs.
So tell us generally what's being proposed.
Okay, I don't know, I don't have the, that's the sign right there, it's gonna be posted on the building, it's not gonna be out in the yard. And, the original application shows exactly where it is on the building to scale.
Is this taking the existing signs out there?
Yes.
Moving into the building?
Yes.
Brian, want to go over your comments?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a memo dated March 20th. And the applicant kind of touched on this already. So the issue was just need to make sure there was enough frontage, which I assumed when writing the memo that there was. You only needed 10 feet of frontage. You have 40, so there's no issue with the 20 square feet. If the commission finds that sign satisfactory in terms of the materials and such, no issue with it at this time. I mean, it meets the area limitations for the code, and you have documentation now on the type of signage. The only thing I'd just encourage, if the original application included a little floor plan showing where the sign was going to go, that just be attached to any approval the commission may make this evening. Yeah, it's on there, you know, it looks like it's just right across the brick banding on the top.
Correct.
So,
And it is to scale.
good. Yeah, so just would attach that to any approval you may issue on this.
Okay. Anybody else have any?
No comments.
I have a question. In your comments, which were emailed to us, Mr. France, you said something about it doesn't tell what kind of letters, whether, the kind of letters or maybe the size or something, but it's the same as the one we received. Are the letters appropriate in your opinion? The kind of letters?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it's a plastic signboard, so they're not individual letters. It's a fabricated signboard with the graphic. I'm assuming some sort of like a vinyl graphic or something. Yeah, I mean, I think the city's allowed this in the past, so I don't see any reason why that can't be approved.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that answered their question.
On this one that you just gave us, it looks like Bill's is a add-on to the sign.
that's how the sign is right now. I don't know if that's an add-on or if that's just how it was made.
Somebody else's.
Yeah.
Joe's truck and auto, I don't know.
Maybe he didn't have a lot of confidence, and he was ready to change the name.
It's a vinyl knockout.
Anybody else have? Question?
No, just one quick question. The attachment,
Mhm.
how are you gonna attach it, basically?
It'll be attached with a screw into the mortar with the lead cap ons. And it'll be a base, you won't see the screw, you know what I'm saying? It'll be the color of the sign is where the screw is, that'll be the color of the attachment.
Okay.
Does anybody have any issues?
Want a motion to? Should I make a motion?
Sure.
I move we approve the application as the amended, and it's my motion.
Second.
All right, motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we're good.
All right, so what's my next step here then?
You can, who does he call now?
Well, Desiree at the building department, but she's out right now. Andrea will be in there.
Okay.
So tomorrow you can get in touch with her and she can let you know what the
Okay,
next step
that's
is.
part of the call, I didn't deal with that.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add one thing, I know the applicant was here some time ago for a freestanding sign. I'd just say, for the record, I think you said you were the building owner.
Yes.
You may want to take a look at, long term.
Correct.
There was a desire to have a second sign, which is not permissible. So, as your tenants are successful, you may want to look at a freestanding sign to accommodate everyone.
Right, and that's why we wanted to leave the one sign, because it has an address and nobody else has an address.
Good.
So that's why we're gonna have to go.
Great.
We're good? All right, thank you for your time.
Sure.
All right, next, signage for Terra Building Products. You, come on up. All right. Let's see if, all right, you want to tell us briefly kind of what you're planning?
We originally canceled by the free cash. It's been down there off of Highland for a long time, and we've been told that it's now our new name is Forterra, so we are just replacing the existing signs with Forterra signs.
It's sign out, count sign, post out front, and then on the building.
Yes.
Brian, you wanna go over your comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the applicant is switching out the signage on the property, again, due to an ownership change, which is permissible under the code. I think some of my very last comments on the third paragraph notes section 117913 L3, which permits modification of a non-conforming sign. The pole sign is non-conforming, they're not permissible any longer in Macedonia, but it can be switched out pursuant to that code section when there's a change of ownership, and it sounds like that's what's happened in this case. So they are able to use that existing pole sign, and regarding the actual area of it, the code allows under 117907B, does allow a 40 square foot ground monument sign. The applicant's illustration shows the sign to be 48.46 square feet, but that's essentially just drawing a geometric shape around the entire sign to get to that square footage. So the way the code reads, from my interpretation, is that the correct method is really to use a combination of regular geometric shapes, and that's under section 117903. And you do that, the actual square footage of that ground sign is 26.87, which is conforming with the code. And regarding the wall sign, no issue there whatsoever. They're entitled to a fair amount of square footage on that wall, in excess of 300 square feet, and the proposal is for a 42 square foot wall sign. So, honestly, they may want to consider having it be a little larger, just the distance it sits back, but that's entirely up to the applicant. So really see no reason why at this point the application can't be approved. I did have a comment in there, just a sort of a word of encouragement that maybe they may want to consider upgrading that ground sign into a more of a monument type structure at some point. That's what the city allows now, is monument signs, so something for the future to consider. I'll answer any questions.
Anybody else have any comments back there? Okay.
I have one question for Mr. France. Did we run into it with the Summit Point, the monument is in some kind of historic district or something? Is there some kind of rule on that where you need monument signs in certain areas of the town?
Yeah, it's that particular application's in the town center district. Empire Parkway, I don't believe, is in that district, so those regulations, additional sort of architectural regulations, would not apply to this application.
So you're just encouraging the applicant?
Just encouraging them, because we don't allow pole signs, and for a while the trend has been and continues to be ground monument signs in like a base type structure with brick or block. Just maybe something long term that they want to consider to sort of spruce up their sign image, if you will.
But we can go
You
through
can-
with this one right now.
Sure.
I believe you can under the current code regulations.
Anybody else have any thoughts?
Want another motion?
I'll take it.
I move the applicant's application be approved as submitted.
All right, got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Very good.
Okay, now I have to go to the voting part before I can.
Yes, yeah, I did. So she'll, go ahead and you can call.
Thank you very much. Have a very nice evening.
All right, next agenda, post signage for Maurice's.
At our sign company, we providing the signage to George Dragon, which you can only for permanent installation.
All right, so tell us what's being proposed, just the plans and stuff, just being proposed.
Yeah, this would be signage consistent with Maurice's national brand image, being turquoise lettering with the flush mount channel letters, which is their preference. So we always move to flush mount channel letter set rather than one on a raceway, providing that the landlord is okay with that information or that method of mounting that letter. So.
All right, Brian, you want to go through your comments?
Sure. My memo dates back to February 5th, 2016, I think, when we first were introduced to this sign. And I reference in my memo the wall sign being requested is 46.69 square feet. And this is for the tenant space, which is Unit 30, previously occupied by Original Mattress, I believe. So regarding this sign, because it's in the Commons, we look at the approved sign plan for Macedonia Commons, which is from 1994, that the Developers Diversified entered into agreement with the city of Macedonia, and that's what has regulated signage since that point in the Commons. And regarding the square footage, that I don't believe is an issue, because the applicant's allowed to have 80 square feet because they have 40 lineal feet of frontage. So the area of the sign is not an issue, and so I point that out. Regarding the raceway, there is no raceway, but the Commons does require a raceway that's colored white to match the background with bronze side returns. I believe the proposal illustrated a black side return with no raceway, I think is what it was.
Correct.
Yeah. And then the sign itself, again, because a raceway is required, would be needed to project 12 inches from the building. That's a 5-inch letter can, and then the raceway being 7 inches deep. And so that, I think, still remains to be an issue. There was an email that was sent to the building department, I think, back in sometime mid to late February. And maybe the applicant can speak to that, but it identifies some other, as they call it, precedents set in Macedonia Commons, where they allow flush-mounted lettering. And I think I've shared with a few of you that that email shows some pictures, and unfortunately, though, and I think the applicant has that there, those pictures of those buildings are exempt from the regulations for the Commons. The Commons agreed upon sign plan specifically to the miscellaneous stores and then the 4 major retail stores. Those pictures that were shown are not regulated under this sign plan. And this is a miscellaneous store, so they would have to mount to a raceway as identified on the common sign plan. And then regarding the color of the letters, the Planning Commission does have some flexibility now. Back in 2014, Developers Diversified approached the city to modify the approved sign plan to allow applicants to choose their own color, and the city did approve that. And I have a June 8th, 2014 memo, I think, that the commission has this evening and have been provided previously, that speaks to this issue. And I think the Planning Commission at that time did approve the change and allow an applicant to pick their colors or use their colors, with the caveat that the commission has to approve that. And so I think that's part of what needs to be approved this evening. Regarding that, I don't think that there's any other issue. I think the applicant's probably going to want to speak to the raceway issue, but that is regulated under the common sign plan that has not been changed with the DDR amendment back in 2014. I can answer any questions the commission or the applicant may have.
Before I jump into that, do either of you guys have any other comments? Okay. I guess you want to do a couple, starting with raceways, talk about that.
Sure.
Just, what's the reason why, besides that's just what they do? Do you know why they like to go with just the letters mount?
Aesthetics would be the first order of business on that particular issue. The raceway, typically from a developer or building owner point of view, would be in place to minimize the penetrations in the wall for when the business moves.
Right.
However, in this particular case, Maurice's does have a rider in their lease that says they would have to return the building surface to like new condition upon their leaving the space. Excuse me, but as far as the wall penetrations go, those would be taken care of professionally and properly upon their exit. So that shouldn't be an issue from that standpoint. Our method of connection is through bolting, so there would be all thread going through the building surface and back with nuts and bolts on the back side of that. The power supplies and all the electrical would be then housed in UL certified wet dry enclosures, which the raceway also acts as a power supply
Yeah, I doubt if you could hold up the letters with just one raceway, yeah.
Essentially, the only EFS, part of the building is the one where Hobby Lobby is, that I'd be fine with, there were no raceways.
Yeah, these locations are specifically mentioned as picked up when he was talking about earlier, they're mentioned in there, it's just the fines, locations. And then, okay, so we could discuss that, I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on the raceway, we have required to.
Maintain that with all the other businesses that are in that same category, so I would think we should give that consideration to continue doing that.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, is this a lighted, it's going to be a lighted turquoise sign, is that right?
Yes, sir.
I think you suggested there are other Maurice stores somewhere with turquoise on them, is that?
Absolutely. I did
Where are they?
An area search within this region
Yeah,
to do that, and I came up with 6 locations. I have Fairview Park, Ohio,
okay.
Aurora, Ohio,
Oh,
Stowe, Ohio,
yeah,
Alliance, Ohio.
oh. They're all turquoise?
Yes, sir.
Are-
I have this.
Are there any other colors you've used anywhere where they might have some kind of regulation like we might have?
I can think of one site that was previous to my company representing the brand and providing signage, and that is in Wisconsin, but nothing in Ohio.
How about these other locations? They have some kind of rules or something, or do you know whether they have any rules?
I don't know what those regulations are. Essentially, I was trying to focus on sites that were open air with signage in, within driving distance of Macedonia that showed the Maurice's branding in teal. And I'm sorry, I included that in an email if you'd like to.
Somehow I missed that, yeah. So then what, these light up at night, is that how they work?
Yes, sir. Yeah, they have white LED in them, and those faces are a white translucent plastic with a first surface teal overlay.
Okay, those are my questions.
So does this email come from you? Is that from you?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If I may, I would have a question for Mr. France. Within other tenants there in Macedonia Commons, I have America's Best contacts and eyeglasses, as well as Eric D. Smith, DDS, and Physician Hearing Center. Are they in a different regulation
Yeah, those are outlets.
from the miscellaneous, the one where Maurice's is?
They're out building.
Yeah, they're all out,
So
outlots.
those are different rules
Right.
than
Yeah.
this attached, okay. No
Yep.
problem.
I guess, this is a tricky situation. We had the thing back from, what was this?
2014.
June of 2014, where we said, we could allow some other colors, but it's gotta come through here for us to approve it. Short of, I think Charming Charlie is pretty much everything's red and white, is that right? The previous mayor was a little bit looser, and he was a little more open to some of the stuff. The current mayor, he's ticked that we've done anything besides red. He's mad at us. Because we've done other things. So it's a little, it's a different way of thinking. He's the one that set up the red lettering before he was previous mayor and now back. So it's a little bit of a.
And is that from 1994?
Yes,
He was mayor.
at that time, and the whole Commons was being planned, that's kind of his vision, he's trying to get back to that, I think. That's where the problem stems, not that he has, it's our approval, but, trying to work with him.
Oh, yeah, I think Dennis can probably best address that, but Plan Commission has approved the colors of awnings. I know Charmin Charlie,
Yeah.
the navy, there was a whole discussion about that over a couple months,
Yeah.
and that was approved, so it seems to me that the color of the awnings would be something that would come to the commission.
Yeah, I'll just do what they're already too. I don't know, what do you guys think?
Well, let me ask Mr. France something. Is there some kind of exemption? We just got this notebook. For national branding, if there's a national branding, is there, it sounds like they're in Wisconsin and here, and that's their color. Is it sort of like a logo where isn't there something to that? Do we have any exemption for national branding?
Well, not specifically for national branding, but I think that the issue is that really the exemption, if you will, or the ability to allow a different color came in 2014 when the Planning Commission did approve an amendment to the common sign plan, and that amendment gives an applicant or a tenant the right to come in with their own color, and that color is then reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission. So exemption or flexibility does exist back from 2014 when the commission approved that amendment to the sign plan.
Well, I'm thinking of other tiny stores like Subway or something. They're not big. They're not a big retail store, but they're national, and they're all yellow, their signs. So I'm kind of wondering if there might be some kind of
If I may
exception.
interject, Maurice's actually, besides Ohio and Wisconsin, they have nearly 1,000 stores nationwide. I've worked from New York to California, and I have just about all 50 states covered with at least one of these stores.
They're mostly turquoise. Is that what
Yes,
the
sir.
problem is?
That is their national branding color, and that has been in place for at least 6 years.
Well, that's you got my comment there. I think there might be something to that then.
Have you ever used a different color anywhere?
Well, we use white if there is a building that the turquoise does not have enough contrast with for visibility. So turquoise is how they do their branding. Their store, the interior of their store implements a lot of teal and turquoise. So the first choice is always turquoise. If the building is too dark for turquoise to show up, then we use white. And it's a very, very rare occasion that we have to do anything other than that. I've been on Maurice's program for about a year and a half. Personally, I've done approximately 180 stores for them, and I have not used anything other than turquoise or white. And my concern with Commons is the color of that wall and whether or not white would have contrast with that light colored sort of cream-colored wall.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Actually, just to be clear, red is required in the miscellaneous stores, not white. We've used white in the past, I believe, but red is the actual color, and the raceway is supposed to be white to match the background. But in regarding the trademarking and colors and such, I pointed out in my June 2014 memo when there was consideration about revisions, I point out that there's really different opinions about whether colors can be regulated under the Federal Trademark Act. There's differing opinions from Ninth Circuit Court and Second Circuit Court regarding that. So I guess to be continued until that's ultimately decided by the courts, but it is a differing opinion. I did a real quick research, and I found instances where red, white, and blue were used for Maurice's.
Correct, and to speak to that from the email response to your memo, the blue was the national branding several years ago. And those signs, of course, they're not gonna change 1,000 stores when they move to teal. So as those signs reach their service limit, we are updating that with turquoise. In fact, I have probably 10 sites where I'm changing the face color from blue to turquoise and updating from neon far as red goes, again, I have not been involved in any of the sites. I can't speak to the use of those. I would imagine that had that been the case, that it was required.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That it was required, you said?
I would say so, yeah, but again, I have not had to do that as of yet.
Yeah, and honestly, looking at the sign, there aren't real big giant fat letters or anything, with they're pretty thin letters. Really what probably is gonna stick out the most is gonna be the big, what you see today is the big awnings and the colors, so, which is why I'm sure they like it. It really catches your eye, it's like, whoa, what's going on there? And actually, the windows, they've had some, I don't know, for signs or something, usually cops gotta drove by there.
No, I missed
I
it.
thought something was painted bright colors, I pulled up closer to it, it just seems like worse inside.
Yeah, those are 8-foot light boxes that they will do branding with, or digital media where they print and put in those
Okay,
things.
yeah, it's like, something's going on. Between that and the awnings, I mean, that's what really, to me, this is more probably noticeable than these letters, but I'm not sure. I think we have the ability to approve it. It's not mandated we have to. I'm not sure which one you guys lean towards, anything.
Yeah, that's always a problem every time this comes up, it'd be nice to get, let's go back to the basics first, though. I mean, the raceways is pretty much spelled out, I don't think,
We haven't given any exceptions to that.
exactly,
Even to
so
the-
I think that part of it should be at the very minimum at this point, and I think we can agree that that needs to be adhered to.
Certainly manufactured that way.
As for the rest, anybody else? Got
My own personal opinion, I think, would be, if it's a national chain or something that could be demonstrated that this is what they use almost everywhere, I think that gives grounds for saying, okay, we can make an exception for that. I think what they try to do here is eliminate a multitude of colors for these individual shops. I mean, Joe's Pizza Shop is the only one in town, he wants it painted pink. I mean, no, we don't do that. But I mean, if it's some big corporation or whatever, said, hey, this is what we use, maybe that's something we can take a look at, and I think maybe have to address a little bit more seriously. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. I think we're all kind of,
I agree with Joe on that. I think, if we want the tenant, we'd like to have the tenant in there, of course, and that would sort of diminish their brand, their trademark. And even, we were going to send this to the law director, but I don't know if it's ever been done or whether we even need to. This is a national brand they're using, and that's their color.
Well, I think when they wrote the legislation before that, limited the colors to red and white or whatever, that was the intent, to keep these individual shops from doing anything they want.
Mhm.
You have to have some type of uniformity, I think. I
Right.
agree to that.
Right.
But I think if somebody that's a large organization comes in, I think that they should be given some type of consideration for what they're doing and
Mhm.
that.
I guess that's the definition that we don't have, is, exactly which ones, because as soon as we approve something like this, then everybody else in the commons is
That's.
entitled to come in again for, then
Yeah.
change the color of their sign to whatever they would like to, and
Mhm.
we have to be prepared to accept that, or
Well, in my experience, it's sometimes a good idea not to have too many rules. We have the authority to approve or not to approve the signs, and if somebody else comes in and says, well, theirs is turquoise, and we'll say, well, yes, but you're just a little shop here, you're not a national brand. You have a national brand. So we have the authority to do that instead of having a bunch of rules on it. Gives us some leeway, we can go either way.
I think as long as we have some type of validation for our decision.
For our thought, yeah.
Yeah, I think that will be substantial, But to just do it, say, well, because we like the guy or something, you can't do that.
No, you can't, no.
But I agree with Frank, though. I mean, we've got to be careful because people are going to misinterpret that. I
Right.
think. They're going to want theirs and individual touches on theirs, and we don't want to do that.
No.
But, I wonder how we can get around that, or.
Probably everybody over there is a national chain.
They're almost,
Huh?
at this point.
And I think too, Mr. Chairman, if I can, that, you know, the issue, I think you have to be careful because who makes the determination of who's a big chain versus a small chain versus a regional chain versus a national chain? And really, you sort of look at the issue on what the purpose is, and the purpose is to regulate aesthetics, to have color uniformity, and I think I pointed that out in my 2014 memo, and was really against any sort of change in the color for that reason, because that was the purpose, as I understand it, of why the color uniformity was put into place, is to really get that across the board for all those small shops that are going to come in and have signage. So, you know, I think the argument that they're a national chain is something that doesn't necessarily it's not necessarily the right argument, because really the issue is aesthetics, and then how do you tell somebody who has, you know, let's say CLE Clothing, who has 4 or 5 locations, comes in and wants to put one in rainbow colors. How do you tell them no? Because they're not a nationwide branding. So I think they just had to be careful with that approach is all. So.
Well, bear in mind, if we don't have anything that differentiates between that, whatever, the only thing we have is just, we may be locked into saying, you have to go with that color.
I think not right now, the way it stands with the thing that was done in 2014, we have the ability, but it's the rules were modified enough to let us feel that, it's not free for all.
I like us having the authority to approve or disapprove, and we can always face issues instead of making some giant rule now. We face issues as they come up. Somebody else comes in and says we have 5 stores. Well, we'd have to consider that. We're considering this one. These people have 1,000 stores across the country, and I would think that's a good reason for modifying Macedonia, Ohio's Commons area, or allowing permitting this, since we're allowed to permit it. That's what I would say on this one.
Okay, well, I think we're all kind of leaning that way. Does anybody want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd make a motion that we would approve the application as to the color and the signage, except for making it with the, what do you call it? The raceway, as required by our code. But we would authorize the color, which is different from our code. We'd authorize that, the color they want, something like that.
I'll second that.
Wasn't a very good motion.
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, yeah, I'll second it. Okay.
Okay.
And the reason is because I think we can still validate that based on your argument, I think,
Yeah.
And, there is a difference between 5 stores and 1,000 stores, I think.
Right.
And I think that's warranted, unless somebody has a legal opinion or, something that says legally we can't do that, I don't see why we can't.
Right.
Any more discussion on that?
I mean, we want to encourage tenants here, we want to do that, and we want to be somewhat flexible, but rules are rules, I understand, but,
Kevin, been on a long time on planning commission, he was sitting back there for a long time, we've never had a tenant go away because we asked him to do red. Never, that's it. Typically,
well, here.
because we do allow it, just as in Walnut, we've done that, I mean, even though their color is the white, which is, we allow it to the white, but we still allow the local yellow on there, so we have.
What if it is red? I mean, is it possible that we can do red? I mean, how much of a problem is that?
It would, had this issue come up sooner, it would have been a deal breaker for Maurice's. They their space is built, and, you know, here we are. DDR's sign criteria and information provided to Maurice's on the subject of color was very, very vague. So, yeah, I don't know if that was done intentionally or how the information led up to signing of the lease, but the lease is signed and the tenant space is built. I mean, essentially, we're just waiting for branding, and they're scheduled to open on April 18th.
Well, we have a motion and second. I'm not going to withdraw it, so.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Good deal. So, color, yes.
Color, yes.
Unless there's-
Right.
No problem. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for your time. My next action would be to contact the building department.
Building department for the permit, yeah.
Thank you so much.
With a revised plan that shows the raceway depth and the letter can and all that.
I will send that to my design department in Dallas as soon as I get back to the hotel, and hopefully have that in the next day or so. Thanks so much.
All right.
Look at that, cut our pay down.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can discuss this for a minute, we're still in, I know Mayor Burley has strong feelings. I don't know that I always agree with that. I mean, when things were established like that, one, the market was different, tripping over themselves to get in here, I think they told them to make it invisible, where you get no sign and they probably still move in.
Invisible.
Yeah, so it's different times. I don't know if people are not suing as much then. I mean, I'm not crazy about that color.
No, it's pretty bright, but so what? That's their color.
It'll be even brighter with the LEDs in it.
Yeah. And then the awnings, I think is really, if you haven't got a true vibe, those blow your mind. Maybe it's good.
Their doors and awnings will attract enough attention.
But I don't know, maybe we need to have a meeting, maybe we need to make an agenda item in one of the meetings to have talk with him about signs and.
And DDR.
And DDR, DDR is just rolling over. They're doing, if somebody says, you want this, oh, we approve it, and they don't care.
No,
They
they
just
don't.
make it the tenant. And you wanna, make them out of Play-Doh and stick it to the wall, and we'll approve that. Yeah, so they're approving anything you want, anything the tenant wants, so they sign the lease. I mean, I'm sure they probably, didn't give them the whole sign package, or they said, oh yeah, they'll definitely approve whatever you want. Look, they got this 2014 thing, knowing that we weren't crazy about doing that, but we did it. I don't know, maybe the next time the mayor's here, maybe we have a little discussion about it, or we put it on the agenda for next time and see if we can make it. Do you want to maybe do that, put sign discussion on there, and then maybe we can touch base with the mayor and see if he's planning to attend, we'll address it, then if not, we'll table that to the next time he does show up. Because I know he does feel pretty strongly about the red, but.
Well, we need something in black and white.
Exactly.
The square footage, or everybody, or
Right.
nobody, or.
Exactly.
And I guess we kind of,
It's hard to rule.
there kind of was that, and we kind of changed it. I mean, you two were on here. We did change it, so, which I'm sure he's not happy with, but whatever that matter, it's there. If he would like to change it back, I mean, there's nothing saying we can't change it back, and then for the future, how well that would stick, I don't know after we've done.
Well, Developers Diversified probably has some input on all this. So they still own that mall?
They are still the owners.
Well, they'll probably come roaring back in here if something would diminish their chances to get the tenants they want
Yeah.
in there, because it's economics.
If you look at some other plazas, and this is something we can talk to the mayor about, if you look at some other plazas, they don't have a consistent color, and I don't think people drive by and go, man, there's no good shopping at this dump.
I would rather have a consistent building than
Yes.
and so forth.
Yeah, and I think we're still maintaining that pretty well.
Yeah, I think the brick, I like that, and I think the aesthetics are good. I think it's good to push these things, but make it a little difficult. We kind of made it for Maurice's, made it difficult, but we have the choice. We could have been hard nosed on it. Of course, he's already got the building there, and
Yeah.
that was another thing.
Yeah, if we really wanted to play tough, we could have gotten this approved as red.
Right.
I think when there was, like I said, I mean, they're built out,
But if we
all
put it,
they do is just
if we put it in
make
stone, that it has to be
Well,
red,
That's right.
then the landlord will say, you're not gonna get that
They
space
got
built.
an approval or denial before they
You
sign
know,
the lease.
Maurice is
And before
going
they put up
elsewhere.
the awnings.
They're in Stowe already, I guess, whatever they do.
Well, evidently, they couldn't get a legal determination on that before. It's the whole thing,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it was still,
I don't know that it ever, I don't know that, I mean, I raised that issue back in
Yeah.
2014,
Yeah.
and it's not that I have, you know, a super big problem with different colors, but the issue is that you either say it's gonna be one color, or you open it up to every color, because to say that certain colors are only allowed, the first time you get
Discrimination.
challenged,
yeah.
it's gonna be a waste of a lawsuit at that point.
Yeah, I wouldn't
So,
do that.
You know, and the issue, you know, with Maurice's, now they did these awnings without approval. They have sort of a history of kind of doing what they want to do. They never came to the planning meeting, you know, they didn't show up. Had they showed up, you know, he said, well, if this was raised early on, well, it was raised immediately. You know, the reason that the sign code was changed is because we raised the issue of the color. And they went back to Developers Diversified. So, you know, I don't have a lot of sympathy either.
No.
And he admitted, well, they've done red. I got to repeat it. They did it because it was required. So, you know, and yeah, red would look bad because their awnings are teal, but they did the
That
awnings
would look
without
bad.
approval.
I guess
So
that was the key word there, it's required, and we really have nothing that in writing that says,
we broke the
black
rule.
and white, it's required.
yeah.
Well, it's
Yeah,
required.
we changed it. We changed it.
It
Yeah.
was changed, so, and now to say, okay, you have to do it, then we're kind of going against what we just turned around and
Yeah.
said, so.
It really is tough too. To you know, there are different opinions on colors and.
Well, it's a marketing thing because when you drive down, oh, there it is. You know, same thing with Charming Charlie's pink doors. There it is. You know,
Which we didn't approve.
Right.
Yeah.
you know, they run the,
Well,
you know,
they've got,
same thing
they've
with,
got a teal door on this.
you know, they got teal doors. So you see the awning and you see the doors, it's like, there they are.
And yeah, and to the mayor's point, that's not what he wants. You know, because
Right.
you're going to see now everybody. There's going to be a flood of them. They're all going to be coming in. And how do you say no? Again, it's how do you say no to somebody who says they want yellow or orange or pink? I mean, pink for that matter. We have pink doors.
Well, we're
How do
allowed
we
to
say
be
no?
arbitrary, though.
What's that?
We're allowed to be arbitrary, even though we let them go.
Well, so we can-
According
we
to
can-
our code, we can allow it or not allow it.
Well,
I
I
like
agree
that.
that's what it says. I don't think that's why I was against it in the first place. I don't think that we can be arbitrary. Even though we put it in there that said we can by motion, I think Mr. Mock made a motion. I don't know that we really can. I mean, I think that you have to have some sort of nexus tying it back to a public benefit or a public reason why you're regulating or putting that regulation
Well, you're
in place.
talking legally there, but I mean, I'm talking here.
Right. No, you're right. It says it right there, so
Right.
you're hard pressed, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we allowed Charming Charlie to do it. Again, that's why I didn't want to see that change in the first place, because it's either you're going to do it and you're going to keep it the red, or you're just going to open it up and anybody can put whatever color. Because how are you arbitrary? I mean, what's your basis for saying green is okay versus red versus orange?
But I think Developers Diversified would be all over you if you made it fixed in stone that has to be red. And there's a lot of these tenants, national tenants, they want in here.
It was originally.
But Developers Diversified is the one who agreed
No,
to it.
but they'll be back there. They'll be back there again because
Yeah, but
they got a
agreed
bunch
to
of
it.
changes.
They agreed to it from 1994 to 2014. They had no issue with it.
Right.
Until a tenant said, well, I'm going to walk if I can't get
Well,
the
that's
color."
what they're going to keep doing though. They'll
Yeah.
be right back in there.
You're right. And so then we should just, open it up and not even have, all I'm saying is the subjectivity. There's no legal basis or nexus to a legal
can say
public
kind of-
benefit to say yellow or green is okay.
Well, we can give them a hard time though. Anybody we like it. It doesn't matter. Let them take them.
That was easy. Ken Martin should have been here.
Oh, God. We'll still be talking right now, it's the first time.
Yeah.
Like I said, in the meantime, look at some other shopping centers, like a Crocker Park, I looked at that, I mean, they don't have, it's a different setup, but everybody's just, it's a free-for-all in there, probably.
Mhm.
And
Right.
that's one of the premier places around, you know.
And they chose, like to Frank's point, they chose to regulate the building and the architecture and not worry about the sign colors.
Yes.
They said you could have this much sign area, limit your letter height and such, but colors, no problem. Because they didn't want to tackle that. I mean, I know the planner
Yeah.
that wrote that package, so they just didn't want to deal with that because color is difficult to tackle.
Yeah.
Yeah, make them have raceways and make them specific.
Right.
Like you say, all the construction parts of it.
That's right, yeah. So, yeah, I don't think you guys, I mean, to your point, it's there. And you absolutely did nothing wrong by making that motion. It's perfectly fine. I mean, it's a legitimate choice you have. All I'm saying is we just have to be careful when the next guy comes with, purple. Because how do you say purple's bad versus
Well,
team?
no, but I think it's having some authority, and we can follow along and make things the aesthetically better and encourage this. And we encourage this. Joe tried to encourage him. Maybe you can go red. Maybe, and he was adamant against.
Just like the last one came in, they really didn't have much of a
But
concern
we
about
have
it.
the right to encourage him. If we put it some other way, just leave it wide open like Crocker Park. No, I don't think that's good either.
No, but once you approve this color, see what else you're gonna do.
Well, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I just don't know what basis you'd use.
Well,
to-
thank you. That becomes a personal opinion, I guess, and I don't know that we have to.
Oh well.
Tough one to
It's been a
tackle.
topic of discussion before, and maybe how we made
Why
it
would it
move,
even
open
be
it up,
legal?
why we could get something more concrete.
Why would it even be a legal issue if it states in here that this board has the authority to regulate it?
They have rules
It's
on
not.
it.
It's not an issue. You have that right. The issue is that Mayor Cook, as Kevin pointed out, the chairman, sorry, Mayor Cook had a little more lax take on colors and such, and Mayor Miglerini does not. And so that's really the issue is, and what's the mayor? I mean, he's the CEO. What's he want from this perspective? And I think all your guys are saying let's sit down with the mayor and talk about this is the best thing you could do, because otherwise we're going to be sitting here. I guarantee you we'll be sitting here having this conversation again if we don't have that direction or it in black and white telling us what the direction is. It's going to be tough for us to
Joe,
make.
ordinances can be challenged by being arbitrary, capricious, and all that. That's how they challenge zoning ordinances and all this stuff. They could challenge it, but that's a problem for them, an expense that they might not want to go through. So we can just sit here and be a little arbitrary and approve and approve. I think that's the way to do it, like we're doing it.
I would rather, and I will certainly go that way, but I would really like to see something a little more concrete.
Well, you could make them all red, and that would be really arbitrary. I mean, they could if you insist on everything be red, that could be that probably would be challenged rather quickly.
Well, that's what it was for
There isn't a
20
way to
years
make
almost.
I understand.
session or negotiation.
Probably more national chains now.
The great example was somebody said Subway. Subway's a great example. I mean, they're yellow right everywhere.
Yellow and green.
But that's not true. I mean, I could point to one right in Richfield at Wheatley Road. It's red.
Really?
Yeah, it's
Well,
red
and they
Subway
let
sign.
this one
Maybe they're red. I
change
can't remember.
because
Yeah.
I thought they were
for their
uniform color.
internal- From their corporate audit, they got a ding because of what their sign was. They didn't have the corporate logo on their sign.
Yeah. To be continued, although I don't think Macedonia wants to be the first one to,
Well, the
or
sign-
to have to take on that color battle in court. That's a tough battle to take on.
But they had just
Expensive.
a standard,
So-
but they had just a standard.
You know what's kind of pretty arbitrary is saying a big store can do it their way, but little stores can't. That strikes me as rather
I
arbitrary.
agree. Yeah, that's. Yep.
All right, anything else?
Nope.
Motion to adjourn?
So move.
All right, all in favor? All right.
All right, young man. This is the swan song, huh?
You can always come back and sit in the audience and
31st.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Still not early.
That's what I'm thinking right now, yeah.